Memorial Day deals are here at Lowe's. Get up to 40% off select major appliances, including Samsung. Plus, save an extra $50 on every $500 you spend on select major appliances $396 or more, like the Samsung Bespoke French Door Refrigerator featuring beverage center and dual ice maker. Shop at Lowe's today. We help, you save. Valid 5/15 through 6/18. Selection varies by location. Total savings varies based on purchase amount. See Lowe's.com for details.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, broadcasting live every Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Central from Panama City Beach, Florida, home of the world's most beautiful beaches. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining me on my weekly broadcast. Every week, I'll feature some of the best instructors, coaches, authors, and entrepreneurs in the golf business today. I begin with a great discussion on Coach's Corner, followed by an insightful interview with my special guest. So let's get started by introducing tonight's Coach's Corner panel. All right, well, thank you, everybody, for joining me. And unfortunately, we're not going to have a Coach's Corner this evening. We decided to give them a break this week, and tonight we're just going to have a couple of great gentlemen. One, of course, has been a regular on the Coach's Corner panel, and a very special guest along with him. So I'll introduce the two of them in just a minute, but just a couple of quick announcements. Again, we're not going to have Coach's Corner this week, and next week, which is, of course, October 31st, Halloween, I will not be doing a show. I'm going to be actually out of town for that date, so I decided not to do a show then either, but I'll be ready to go back here on the 7th of November with the Coach's Corner panel that evening and some great guests. So again, no Coach's Corner panel tonight and no show next week, October 31st. Also, I want to take an opportunity to really thank the sponsor of the Coach's Corner panel this season, golfswing.com. They've been a really great sponsor, and they're going to sponsor again here to the end of the season, and we'll see about next year. But let me tell you a little bit about them and a great way that you can save on their website. They're at golfswing.com with their cutting-edge technology have teamed up alongside some of the best golf instructors, coaches, and swing gurus in the business. Together, they have created one of the best video teaching and training online platforms in golf. So if you're ready to break 100, 90, 80, or even 70, then you want to join their online video academy and learn from some of the best. And if you enter in promo code GolfTalkLive at checkout, you can receive up to 50% off the subscription price. So join today, watch, practice, and improve your game. And at the end of the show, after I've spoken with my guest this evening, I will play a short video or audio clip, telling you a little bit more about golfswing.com. So I hope you'll stay in at the end of the show to hear that. But also, again, after the end of the show, go to golfswing.com, enter promo code GolfTalkLive at checkout, and get 50% off the subscription price. All right, as I mentioned, I got two great guests. One has been pretty regular on the last several years on the Coach's Corner panel. He's also been a featured guest many times. Of course, I'm talking about my good friend John Hughes, PGA Master Professional and the president of the North Florida PGA section, as well as the 2013 PGA of America Horton Smith Award recipient. And he's also a top 25 instructor with Golf Tips magazine. And he's brought along a great friend of his, Jason Gabriel, who is originally from Aiken, South Carolina, but now currently resides in Hickory, North Carolina. He's 43 and graduated from high school back in '94. And he was also the 1998 South Carolina Amateur Champion. He turned pro actually in 2003 and played on the Tight Lies Tour and Carolina Mountain Tour for a while, in fact about 5 years. But he's regained his amateur status back in 2017. He joins me along with John here on Golf Talk Live. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ted.
Hi,
Happy
Ted.
to be here.
All right. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, guys. I think what we'll do first before we get into some of the questions tonight is I think the first obvious one, and John, I'm going to let you start off, and then Jason, if you want to add some thoughts to it as well. Maybe you can talk about a little bit how your relationship started and what that relationship really is, and how long you've known one another.
Thanks again, Ted, for having me on. Always a pleasure. And tonight, I look at this as a really special time with a really special friend that we go back about 20, 21 years. I met Jason at Hands Lake Country Club, Golf and Country Club in Aiken, South Carolina, where he would sort of hang out, play some golf. He had already won the amateur match play in the Carolinas about 3 or 4 months prior to my arrival. And we just sort of hit it off. He was always inquisitive. I think initially he was probably trying to play stump John kind of thing. What does he know? But we go out and we play every so often, 9 holes here, 9 holes there, and we struck up a really good relationship. And the next thing I know, I'm his coach. And I had a wonderful time coaching him through his professional career. Wherever I went, he would visit me. Eventually, I had to leave Hounds Lake to advance my career. And no matter where I went, Jason was following me, which was really cool to know that someone thought that highly of me, that whether I was 2 miles away or 200 miles away, they were willing to come visit me. And that stayed intact until Jason decided, you know what, golf's not going to take me where I wanted to go. And we sort of lost track of each other a little bit, not a lot. We would text each other, email each other from time to time. And this past spring, I got a call, a lengthy but really good call from him saying, hey, got my amateur status back. I want to go compete again. I've been toying with my swing. I've taken a couple lessons here or there. His wife, Suzanne, who actually worked for me at Hounds Lake, said, well, look, John's doing this. You've always said he always knew your swing and could get you playing well. Why don't you call him? And from there, we've rekindled a coaching relationship. But I would tell you, this is a person that I've always considered a friend, and somebody always is very genuine to the efforts that he puts in, which is really important from my end, not only personally, but from a coaching end. It's always great to work with someone who's willing to put the hard work in, willing to make the sacrifices, and sees things for what they are. And that's always been Jason's MO, is he sees exactly what's on the table, and that makes him that much better a competitor when in the competitive mode.
Well said. And Jason, just to sort of, firm up a little bit about what John was saying, obviously, at that time, we're going to sort of fast backtrack, if you will, a little bit, a number of years. But, you obviously had a desire to become much better of a player, even though at that time you were an amateur golfer. What were some of your thought process and why? What sort of drew you to John?
Well, there was an immediate liking to John. Even from the start, he was like that old pair of shoes you always go back to. Something was just comfortable. And John was very inquisitive when we would go out and play our rounds. He was always interested in what are you thinking? What's going through your head? What's your mindset? How are you figuring this out? So he always wanted to know more. I suppose from a player, a better player in the game, curious about what they were thinking, maybe how that got them there. But as he got to know me and know my game, when I decided to further my career, that there wasn't really any other place that I wanted to go, because he knew me from we'll call it my formative years. Mm-hmm. So he knew my mindset pretty well, knew my game pretty well, and there was really no one else I wanted to turn to.
Right.
And
well
that
said.
even came up again later in years.
Right. And I think it's important, Jason, for a player, you both really sort of hit it on the head, and that is, there has to be a comfort level. I mean, there's a lot of great instructors and a lot of great teachers out there, but there has to be that sort of rapport. And I think it's important for anybody that's looking to connect with a teacher or coach, that there has to be, sort of a mutual, I won't even go further than respect, but there has to be sort of a mutual connection, because this is somebody, obviously you were at that time, had aspirations of becoming a better player, And you're sort of putting that part of you in somebody else's hand to help guide and navigate you through those sort of uncharted waters at times. So you have to have somebody that you feel very comfortable with, and also you have to have somebody that is, not just there talking about, well, you've got to do this and you've got to do that, but actually asking you questions and engaging to get your mindset, because I think that's important for a coach to understand the mindset of the player that they're working with. And obviously that was something that you guys seem to have a good rapport with. So I want to ask, and what I'm going to do with the questions that I'm going to put forth here tonight is I want to look at it, one, from the player's perspective, and then I also want to look at it from the coach's perspective. So, Jason, I'm going to start with you on this one. And I want you to talk a little bit about what it took for you to play, obviously, great amateur golf back then when you were younger versus now.
Oh, wow. Back in my early years, I believe it was easier because life hasn't hit me yet. There's no mortgage to pay. There's no career to worry about. We'll go do a little bit of work, and we'll go play golf in the afternoons. It wasn't a problem focusing out on the golf course. But as time goes on and you get married, you have a family, you're working on a career. As I'm out there on the golf course, there's lots of things that are bouncing around in my head during the course of 18 holes. Even competitively, my mind is still drifting in and out. And that's actually one of the things I struggle with now, is sometimes maintaining focus. For me, that's probably the big hitter.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. And John, what's interesting is, as you know, I've spoken to a number of the young ladies off of the Symetra Tour. I do that on Tuesday mornings on the Women of Golf show with my good friend and co-host Cindy Miller, who's an LPGA professional. And what's interesting is, obviously, in most cases, not all of them, but most cases, these young girls are not married. They really don't have any outside influences. They're many cases fresh out of college. So as Jason pointed out, they're pretty open-minded. They can really focus 100% in their golf game with very little outside distractions. So from a coach's standpoint, when you're working with a player that isn't in Jason's category right now, let's go back 15, 20 years ago, he's ready to sort of get more aggressive in his play. He doesn't have those outside influences. Is that easier for you as a coach to work with a player like that? And when it gets to a point where there do become outside distractions, I want you to also talk about how you handle under those circumstances, what you do to keep them on focus and on point.
So I would right off the bat say there's always distractions of some type. And you, as a coach, you always have to know, or at least have a handle of what those are. In Jason's case and the Symetra Tour cases that you described, the distractions of a young single golfer are more along the lines of keeping them focused enough on their dream, I guess is the best way to say it, and have them understand that nothing good comes overnight. The magic dust is in their pocket. They've got to reach in every day and not allow other things to get distracted or have them distracted as they develop relationships with a significant other, with other people they put on their team, whether it's a nutritionist or a sports psychologist. When there are more minds and more opinions, that in itself is a distraction. In Jason's case, it was pretty much just him. He and Suzanne go all the way back to them, but she was extremely supportive of what he did and knew that was part of the cyber. So it was never a distraction. It was actually a support mechanism. And I think privately he relied on her very much at the time, and then relied on me, not necessarily to keep the social distractions away so much as to say, John, how do I keep focused on this? What is it that I have to do to reach this? Because there were a lot of times when he or anybody else would get frustrated and they sort of look at their coach and it's like, when's this going to happen? I'm going through that right now with a pretty decent amateur here locally that has the skill and talent, but just works too fast. And as he's working too fast, and I'm trying to get him to slow it down a little bit so he can understand what's going on, he keeps looking at me and says, when's this going to happen? How many reps do I have to do? And I think that's sort of the biggest distraction of somebody who's got some very high, lofty goals, to have him understand that it's a step-by-step process to get there. That in itself is probably the biggest distraction, whether you're Symetra, you're trying to play Corn Ferry to get to the PGA, to where it really doesn't matter. It's getting some kind of break to have you understand this is what it takes. And a small break could be a very simple shot feeling, to getting an exemption into a tournament, to all of a sudden deciding I'm going to work 8 hours instead of 4 hours kind of thing. It's different for everybody.
Yeah, and well said. And you know, really what's interesting about, you know, the discussion tonight and why I really, you know, sort of jumped at this opportunity to have you come on, Jason, with John and I, you know, excuse me, quite often on the show, of course, when we're, you know, talking on Coach's Corner and some of the other discussions, you know, we get a lot of times from the coach's perspective or from the teaching professional's perspective, and it's interesting to have from a player's perspective what they're looking for, you know, what their expectations are, you know, when dealing with their coach or what have you. And you know, this is something that I think that the listeners would benefit from, even if they're not necessarily, if their goals aren't as lofty as what yours have been. It gives them an idea of really what to expect and the type of relationship they really need to have. And I want to go back to you, Jason, just sort of on this question for a little bit, and I want to sort of alter it a little bit. Do you think or do you feel that how you practiced back then as opposed to how you're practicing now, what were some of the things that you've learned or improved on, not necessarily on the actual game itself or your ball striking abilities, but your actual mindset of practice and preparation? How does it differ now than what it was, say, you know, 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I have to improve on my quality of practice now, simply because I don't get as much of it now as I did 20 years ago when I was single and such. So when I'm out practicing, I don't get so wrapped up in results. If I'm if I'm working on a new movement, I'll try to make sure that I'm performing this movement regardless of what the results may be, because I'm making the assumption that as I get this more in tune with myself, the results will come. And I'm also looking at what my deficiencies are. I'm spending more time on my deficiencies instead of, okay, I hit a great tee ball. Why do I need to spend time practicing hitting my tee shot? Not really. So I go to where I have trouble, and that's where I focus. And through the practice, I may hit on a few things that I do pretty well just to brush up on them for lack of a better term there, but I'm focusing on my deficiencies primarily.
So would it be fair to say then that you practice more with purpose today than maybe what you did at that point in your career? That today, understanding that, you know, sometimes the results are not going to be immediate, but I know that if I focus on the things that I need to, or I know that are going to be important for long-term results, as long as I have that purpose in mind, that I'm going to, you know, at some point I'm going to yield the results, as opposed to just going out there and as we see so many times with a lot of our weekend golfers not just sort of raking and hitting balls without really any sort of focus or purpose. Would that be fairly accurate then? Is that your practice has become more purposeful?
Absolutely. Going out there and just beating 100 balls with no purpose does, to me, little to no good. I would rather hit 30 balls and concentrate on every single swing, even if they're all bad. The end result is going to be better for me. And even when I spend time with John, he'll even pull me aside when I'm going through a little bit of frustration and say, Jason, you just hit 10 balls in 2 minutes. What are you doing? Slow it down.
Yeah, and that's something that we see, John, you and I see this all the time out in the practice tee with a lot of our students, and that is, they don't really have any sort of organizational skills when they're at the golf course. They just sort of, okay, well, I know I've got to do this and I've got to do that, and they just sort of, go into almost like a trance and not really have any sort of genuine focus. So, you've obviously watched Jason for a number of years, both then and now. What are some of the noticeable difference that you see in Jason now as opposed to things that you noticed, again, back then?
A lot of it stems from what he originally said. There's no mortgage, there's no family, there's no career. So with that and the maturation process in the past 20 plus years, he is a much more efficient golfer. He just hit it right on the head. Everything I do has a purpose. I'd rather hit 30 than 100 kind of thing. It was really refreshing to see the maturation process to someone who I'd not seen hit a ball in quite a while. But more importantly, what his train of thought was on the golf course had matured. He was never a risk taker per se, but when the risk reward was there and he could play conservatively aggressive, which is a term I've always used, it means making a conservative decision to be able to play the shot aggressively and not hold back. He was definitely in that kind of structure as far as a strategy goes. From a practice standpoint of view, I think everybody remains in a trance, is the word you used, Ted. I think you sort of get drifting out of where your purpose is. And what a great coach will do is just remind you of what that purpose is. There's lots of different ways of doing it. In Jason's case, I really never have to worry about him hitting too many balls in 2 minutes or less, unless we're actually trying to do that, to jump up the pressure, to make him more mentally focused, more mentally tough. But when he gets into something that is not of his maturity level now, it's not so much reminding him of what he's doing is immature so much as to remind him of what his purpose is. And he's come a really long way that way. It's incredible to see. And I place it all on him and just the experiences he's had in life and being to prioritize where his golf game is now. And I think that's a real key, is when you over-prioritize the game in front of things that absolutely need to be in front of it, you can get in this manic mode of practice of playing, and your mind's just not there. His mind's always there. It's a matter of reminding him what his mind should be on. Like anybody else, you're going to drift off. From a physical standpoint of view, we all age kind of deal, but he's weathered the storm pretty darn well, and he's still capable of playing with very young competitors, which is also a bright spot. So there's some things there we don't really have to be overly concerned about so much as maintaining his physical fitness so he can compete at the highest amateur levels.
Right, and I think it's a matter at this stage, Jason, really changing your priorities. Back in the beginning, you obviously had different goals, and your goals have obviously changed. But I want to ask you one other thing, and then I want to move on to another question. But I want to ask you this one first, and really it's for the benefit of the listeners, because I know there's a lot of golfers out there that get fixated on distance, and I've got to hit it, I've got to belt it out there. Would you say that for you, as much as we all want to hit it a long way, that keeping it in play is a higher priority than being able to hit it 300 yards and not knowing where it's going to go?
Oh, without a doubt. I've always been on the, shall we say, shorter end of the stick when it comes to distance. I've always been the guy first in line hitting the second shot out in the fairway. And I do say fairway. And everybody's searching for distance. Myself, never-ending search. But at the end of the day, I would rather give up 10 yards to be playing from the fairway. Because at the end of that hole, then you're putting for birdie, or you've got an easy chip. If you're pitching out from the woods, if you're constantly putting for pars, that doesn't make for a very good round of golf, or even a fun round of golf. I would rather hit 2 more clubs out of the fairway and maybe end up somewhere around even par at the end of the day. But it's just easier that way.
Yeah, and a great point. Because and the reason why I asked you that, Jason, because you've obviously played at a high level, and for a lot of our weekend warriors that may never get to that point, and again, we all, especially as we age, we're going to lose a little bit of distance. Our physical ability isn't going to be quite as much as it was, when we were in our 20s, let's say. So obviously, we want to get that extra distance. But I think that, and it shows to, teachers and that, like John and I, when we go out in the range and we see people spending a majority of their practice sessions, on the tee, hitting their driver or what have you, and not really focusing on the short game very much. And then they wonder why they never are able to break par, or even sometimes even break 100. And I think this is why our handicaps are still so high, because people are focusing on the wrong end of the game. All right, I want to fast forward a little bit. Jason, I'm going to come back to you here. And then, John, I want to get your thoughts here as well. We're going to fast forward it to around the early 2000s when you turned pro. Obviously, this was a goal of yours to play at a professional level. What, in your mind, do you recollect? What was it that it took? What mindset did it take? And what did you need to do to get to that level?
To be honest, I really did not know. It was part an experiment. At the time, I was playing some pretty decent golf, and I was curious as to how far can I really take this, because I didn't want to get 20 years down the road, being in my 40s, and then having to look back and wonder, what if I'd have tried to play professionally? Could I have made it? Could I have not? Sit here today, and I don't have that question, and I'm pretty comfortable with the answer. But to say what it's going to take, it obviously takes a large commitment, not only on yourself, your time commitment, but if you have family involved, it's going to be a large commitment on the family, because you may or may not be bringing home a paycheck every week. So it requires some support, whether it be from family or from some outside sources supporting you during this venture.
Yeah, and also too, there's travel involved. So, there might be times where you're on the road and traveling from event to event. So, again, when you've got other obligations outside of that, you have to have that good support. John, I want to ask you a similar question along the lines of now professional player. Obviously, again, you worked with Jason early on and, sort of helped guide him towards this next stage of his career. When you're dealing with a player such as Jason, or really any player, that comes to you and says, this is what my goal is. I want to get out there and I want to compete on a professional level. What goes through your mind? What questions do you say to yourself, or what thought process do you have to yourself? And what discussion do you have with the player based on what you, after speaking with him, after assessing him, that is it realistic? Is it not realistic? And how does it go from there?
My job as a coach is to be as real with that person as possible from the get-go. And I got a chuckle when Jason said he had no clue, in essence, what he was getting himself into. And I would tell you that the vast majority of good, very good amateurs who seek out a professional career fall into that same bucket. They don't know what it's going to take. The collegiate golfer right now, I think, has a big leg up on what it's going to take because it's become so competitive at almost every level of collegiate play. The programs are better, the facilities are better, the coaching's better, the support systems are better, and they do a really good job of educating the player while traveling, while being in school, of time management, of commitment level to within the time management at everything that they're doing. And that's really the first thing that I look at. Most people who come to me who are very, very good amateurs or are desiring to play at a higher level competitively, amateur or professional, they all have talent. They all have some skill to a degree. Everybody's got a deficiency here or there, even at the highest levels. But do they have a realistic understanding of what that time management element is? And that was something that Jason and I did early on. Hey, you're jumping up a level here, and you're going to have more commitment to these other things. With skill and talent, do they have the physique? Do they have the fitness level to endure what they're going to have to endure? And early on, I would say most do not. Most do not have the endurance level to practice 4 to 6 hours a day, go to the gym, work out, plus get everything else done that they need to get done, and realize that the first day they do it is the first day closer to reaching their goal. That's always not a struggle on my end so much as I wish I had a nickel for every time I've had to remind someone of those things. It's just something that doesn't necessarily fall into place with that new person, very excited, all the right reasons for doing what they're going to do, but really do not have a clue as to what they're stepping into. They're stepping into their first job, and they are their own employer. They're the employee and the employer, and they have to be responsible to themselves for that. I think what Jason was able to do, because of how he was working at the time, he was actually having 2 full-time jobs, and my hat's off to him then and now. He would put in his 8 hours or whatever he needed to do, but as soon as he got off work, he was at the golf course working. And that's what it took, and that's why he had some success playing professionally. The breaks didn't go his way from a financial standpoint of view as far as allowing him to go further. But from a proving standpoint of view, there was a lot of people that saw how much he proved to himself, how far he could go. And I think when I'm talking to somebody, I'm always using Jason as an example, a couple of others as an example as to the sacrifice. That's what it boils down to, is a sacrifice that you're not aware that you're going to need to make because it is priority number one. It's like I said, Jason is not the only one in that bucket. He won't be the last one in that bucket. But if I were to tell anybody out there, whether it's playing collegiately, playing at a high-level amateur, trying to play professional, you've got to understand what you're getting yourself into, and that it is a full-time job. And you have to be responsible to yourself. You can't rely on other people to do it for you or sort of remind you that you have to do it. And that's probably the bigger struggle with the newbie is, as a coach, I'm probably doing a lot more reminding than I actually am skill development, instruction, or coaching. It's more they probably don't have the support mechanism built into them at the time to go, hey, remember you've got an appointment with the nutritionist or the fitness person. Remember you got a qualifier. Make sure you get there 90 minutes ahead of time, not 9 minutes ahead of time, kind of thing. That was not something I never had to worry about with Jason, but there are some people that I coach that I do have to remind.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's always, a balancing act. Jason, I want to ask you, a follow-up question. Based on what you know now through that journey of becoming a professional golfer and knowing what you had to go through, if you had the ear, which you do, of maybe a parent or, even a player who has those same aspirations, what advice would you give them to not necessarily pursue their dream, because obviously they've got their own dreams, but what, I guess, guidance would you give them in helping them to make the decision and helping them to realize exactly what it's going to take to get to that level?
I don't think you ever can prepare yourself for what it's going to take. One of those things you just have to go and do. But as far as pursuing a dream, I love to see anybody go pursue what they want to do, no matter what it may be. Do it while you're young. The older you get, the more difficult it gets. You get out of school, you even think you want to try it, just go ahead and do it.
Right.
That's when it's going to be the easiest, mainly from a physical standpoint. When you get out of college, you're probably in the best shape of your life, probably as strong as you're going to be. You're likely not married. You don't have a family. You don't have, we'll say, life beating you down, getting through the daily grind.
Right.
So
right.
Do it while you're young and enjoy it. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, well.
Yeah, at least you've made the effort. No, I agree with that analogy because, when I look back to that age, your outlook on things is much different. As you said, obviously life happens as it goes along, and you have to sometimes bear down depending on the circumstances. But at that time, you're kind of carefree and you're in a position, really, you're young enough that you can take more risk. And again, you might make it, you might not, but at least, as you pointed out earlier, you don't want to look back with regret and say, I wish I had have taken that opportunity. Even if it didn't end up panning out to what I had hoped for, at least I can say I gave it my best shot. And that is the time to do it when you're young and you've got that youthful energy and that ambition to get out there and do that. Again, at least you can look back and say that you've given it your best. John, I want to come to you with the next question, and it's really about the relationship. I know we touched a little bit on it earlier, but the relationship that you have and have had as a coach now as opposed to 20 years ago. How has that dynamic changed? What's different about the relationship today than what it was 20 years ago?
I'd say the biggest difference is just how life has changed us both and some of the off topics that are discussed when we're together. The relationship from a coach-player standpoint of view, I don't believe has changed much at all. It's still very synergistic. It's still very open in both directions. No one takes offense at anything, which is really key. I'm not offended if he comes up with something that maybe I'm not seeing because he's feeling it different than what I'm seeing, and vice versa. I think the biggest difference is talking about expectations a little bit differently. Obviously, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, expectations were set a lot higher. and the way we went about planning the coaching sessions and planning other things was much different than what it is now. The off topics are family, in particular his son and his wife, and the different things they do together, not only on the golf course but off the golf course, and how that relates to me and my family. Obviously, I work for myself now. I work for somebody else when I first met him. So that dynamic has changed, and I've got to take my hat off to Jason. When we talk, he's always asking about my business, which shows a level of commitment to the relationship that not a lot of players will do. What I find is the players that always come back to me, I've always shown an interest in them. That's just part of me and part of my fiber. The ones that continue with me are always asking me more important, and they'll literally say, "Hey, John, more important, how's your son, or how's your business going?" And I'd say the maturation process, the years in between first meeting and now, provides the respect, an ongoing, evolving respect, which creates that great, healthy relationship. Not to compare an apple to orange, but a Jack Grat to a Jack Nicklaus. That relationship survived 40 plus years for the same reasons. And if you had asked Jack Nicklaus how that relationship was at the beginning, obviously as a young man, very formative years, 8, 9, 10 years old, it was much different. But I would say, if you look at any long-term coaching relationship in any sport, that evolution takes place, and I definitely see it and feel it with Jason.
Very good. Jason, let me ask you, from a coaching perspective, and obviously I'm talking about John here, 15, 20 years ago, you had different expectations from John. You're developing the skills at that point. You're learning to to sort of put your game together. But now fast forward those 20 years, you understand how the game is played. You've had experience and some valuable both on and off the course experiences have helped you to mature as a player. So compared to what you were looking for then from a coach, what are your expectations now as from your coach?
Really, I don't believe the expectations have changed that much. I look at John for support, also a resource, one of my 2 most important resources. But in today's light, my desire to be a better golfer is probably equal to what it was 20 years ago. My competitive flame really hasn't gone out. I can look at it now in a different perspective and realize what I can really do with it and what I can't do with it, and that came from the experiences of the last 20 years. So what's more important? Right now it's the family. Not necessarily trying to go play golf. Golf is great, but at the end of the day, it's just golf, man.
Right.
So John is one of my biggest supports. I look at him as a resource. If there's something I can't figure out, which I'm going to try to figure out on my own, but a lot of times I can't do it. And if I want to get better, if I want to improve, I need another set of eyes and ears. What's going on?
What's changed in your game now? Obviously, you've mentioned, distance is going to be one of them as we age. We lose a little bit of distance, but what are some primary goals that you're going to set now that John can help you with that might be different, or are they different than what they were 15, 20 years ago?
A good question, and here's an interesting point. Because of today's technology being so much better than it was 20 years ago, not only in the golf club but in the golf ball, I believe I actually hit the ball further today than I did 20 years ago, which or maybe I'll just say that's a test of my great physical condition. Not really.
I guess we can all say that. But yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously technology, as John knows as well, has changed and helped us all, get more distance, and of course even be more accurate with game improvement, clubs. But are there certain things that you really, again, you've gotten to a level, what needs to get done? Is it more than, would it be, I guess, safe to say it's more of a support mechanism now as opposed to a teaching tool?
Well, it's definitely some of both. My time with John, we can point out where my deficiencies are, and we look at the area where you're going to consider your scoring zone. We'll call it certainly 100 yards and in. Maybe we'll take it something closer to 60 yards and in. I have begun spending a lot of time working on all my shots from 100 yards and in, getting those down, and then we start moving it out a little bit further. So the closer you are to the green, the more that expectation becomes that you should be able to get the ball up and down, we'll say, whether it be for birdie. Hopefully, sometimes it's for par, but, you're in that scoring zone. We need to produce something here. So that's one of the things that I've been looking at recently. And that comes from John picking out what's wrong.
Right. Well, and that's it. And John, just to sort of give you the same question, you obviously as a coach and have worked with Jason over the years, you have obviously a very good understanding of not only of his physical abilities, but also his mindset as well. So from your standpoint, what are you looking and what are you expecting from him at this point?
I'm not expecting anything out of Jason that he's not capable of doing, is the way I'd say it. And I try to have that perspective on each and every client of mine. A real quick difference that I was thinking of as Jason was talking about the golf ball is the way we communicate now is much different, which leads into this expectation. When we first met, we were literally 5 miles apart most of the time, and then as I progressed through my career, at the most, I was probably 120 miles away. Now we're over almost 700 miles away, so our time spent together is much, much different. And we communicate a lot digitally with video, with text, with phone, that kind of thing. When he needs my support, the phone rings as soon as I can get to it. If not right then and there, I'm picking up the phone a lot of times on the way home from the golf course after a long day out there. From an expectational level, Jason's capable of winning another amateur championship. And we spoke about a lot of things the last time he was here and since then as far as the importance of his third shot on any hole, which is why both of us really looked at what is he doing 60 yards and in. When you think about it, your third shot on a 3, 4, or 5 is a very pivotal shot at the highest of competitive levels. And with that, I know back in the day, I thought I had a great short game. He would amaze me with some of the shots he would come up with. But then at the same time, he was sort of limited from a creativity standpoint of view. Fast forward 20 years later, talking about the third shot and the statistical probabilities of the third shot, immediately you could see the light bulb go off in his head because of the 20 years of experience that's shown him, yeah, maybe I can be more creative. I've played with a lot of people who do this and that, and that's a skill I desire to have. Let's work on that, which is really key. It's almost like he's 19 to 22 years old again. And you see that in all the great players, that they are inquisitive, they are curious, and they're always looking to create a bigger expectation level for themselves. I'm not expecting him to go out and win the U.S. Am or the U.S. Senior Am in a few years, unless that's a priority for him. Talent-wise, he and I have spoken about it. Does he have the talent? Absolutely. But because of his son, because of his wife, because of his career, because of the other things they like to do, as he said it, it's just golf. Where does it stand in what I call life priorities? And I try to base my expectations of him based on his life priorities. If golf's not number one or number two, it's 5 or 6. And let's make expectational goals that meet that 5 or 6 priority. What's neat about Jason is the family is competitive at everything they do. It's wonderful to watch him on Facebook and other things, and to share text with his wife is always texting me about things. It's really neat to see how competitive they are. So it's real easy to feed him something because he has the environment to allow it to germinate. He has the environment to allow that competitiveness to grow while still sticking a new challenge out there. And the new challenges is what creates the new expectation level. And it's a mutual thing. If he says, you know what, I don't have the time to do this, then I back off it. But if it's something he wants to do, I think we both jump in the pool, the deep end, and try to swim our way out of it, which makes it best for him because being able to swim your way out of situations on the course is critical. And he's always been good at it. I think to share confidence that Jason and I had in a phone call recently, getting back to speed to be able to do that when you've been out of the game so long, that's a little tougher to acquire. It's not you've forgotten about it. It's just there's nothing that beats actual competitiveness. And the more he throws himself into the fire, I think the higher expectation he'll have of himself, which means I'll have a higher expectation of him.
Right. Yeah, and I think that we've seen time and time again. Tiger Woods comes to mind. He played at the highest level of the game that you can play, and had a tremendous stretch in his career. And then obviously around 2010 and a little beyond, he's struggled to get back. But now we're starting to see, as he plays more and more back in that competitive ring. Obviously, he's had some physical issues along the way, but he's starting even this weekend, or going into this weekend, we're seeing him sort of bounce back into that high level again. So obviously that is going to be a factor for you as well, Jason, as you play more again and get back in that sort of competition. Your skill set is going to be continually tested, but obviously based on your experiences, a lot of those things are going to come back to memory. Let me ask you, Jason, this question, for benefit of our amateurs out there. We mentioned earlier about time. Back 20 years ago, time was much different. The level of outside commitment wasn't maybe quite as strong. So you had a lot more time to be able to dedicate to golf. And a lot of our amateur golfers in today's economy, in today's environment, they don't spend the time, or they don't have the time. What do you do, or what would you suggest to be able to allow them to get the most out of their game, given the time restrictions that we have now? I mean, people are sometimes working 2 jobs or what have you, and they may not necessarily want to play at your level, but just to be able to get benefits through their practice sessions now, because this is a big issue in the golf industry right now, is people just don't have time to go and take lessons as much, or go out and play as much. So if you were putting yourself in their shoes and you still wanted to be competitive even with your weekend foursome, what would you suggest to them that they can do to help keep themselves somewhat competitive in this sort of time-restricted environment?
Well, the one thing that I would recommend concentrating on is the short game, which you don't really need a golf course to do that. you can putt around the house. I do that myself. Or if you have a backyard, you can go out in the backyard and hit some chip shots into a bucket, or have your chipping tree as your target. But the little things, so much of the game is spent on the short shots. The better you are at those, the better your score is going to be at the end of the day. So you don't really need to go to a practice facility or a golf course. You don't need a chipping green or a putting green. These are things you can work on at home, and you're probably going to get some very productive results out of them.
Well said. Yeah, this is, John, this is an area that, we've talked about quite a bit on Coach's Corner is the time factor. A lot of people use time as an excuse, and it's certainly a valid one. I just don't have time to go and practice. I don't have time to, play 18 anymore. And this is something, as instructors that we struggle with on a day-to-day basis in this environment. Obviously, many of us still have a full lesson plan every day, but we're noticing a change in the industry as people are engaging in other activities or have other outside interests. Golf sort of slides down on the priority. So given that, from a coach's perspective, what do you, when you're teaching your students that maybe don't have as much time to come for as many lessons or spend as much time with you on the golf course, what other options do you provide for them to help them utilize that time and still get benefit?
I call it homework for obvious reasons, and Jason sort of alluded to it. Again, as I'm interviewing someone the first time out, I'm trying to understand what their time ability is. They always talk about it as time constraint. I'll flip the coin on them. I'm like, well, what kind of time do you have? So they can understand this perspective that I'm going to come from, and based on how much time they have will be how much I feed them and how I feed it to them. I've got a client who's got a simulator in his little side house on his property. He's in there every night after he puts his son to bed. So I know he's got a lot of time on his hands, and he devotes more time to it. So I'm feeding him not necessarily faster. I'm actually feeding him slower, very much like a Jason, because he's got some skill. It's a matter of him understanding some things that he's right now lost about as far as feeling what transitional things are happening in his golf swing, feeling his weight distribution and ground leverage kind of thing. Whereas somebody, I have another client, never practices. Their practice is considered to be on the golf course. So I'm not looking to provide them something that's going to require them to practice. They need something more instantaneous. I'm trying to provide them something more instantaneous, but at the same time deeply rooted in what the cause of their problems are, so they can understand that, hey, why did that shot happen? Well, here's how you can put a small little Band-Aid on it. The Band-Aid is based on the cause, the long-term solution, and the cause is X. And that's really the difference between someone with no time and someone with a lot of time. With a lot of time, you can utilize that time differently. With very little time, someone wanting instant gratification, the first thing is letting them know golf doesn't provide it. However, in your situation, here are some things that you should be doing. So that person, I'm probably spending a little bit more time on the golf course, let's believe it or not, and less time on the range. Where someone like Jason, we split it 50-50. There's never a time now that we don't go out to the golf course each time we're together to keep tabs on what's going on out there, as well as to start employment of what skill development we're working on. And when you look at the overall picture of what your time is as a golfer, you've got to be honest with yourself first. You've got to be honest with the person you've chosen to coach you second, because without that honesty, without telling him exactly what kind of time allotment you have, that you're willing to put into it, you're going to come away with a poor experience. And if you've got a good coach, they're going to quiz you, and you may hate the quizzing, but there's a reason for it. They're trying to figure out what kind of time do you have.
Yeah, well said, John. Jason, goals are an important thing in any part of your life, regardless of whether it's business or home life. You want to set goals, and then you want to put a plan in place to reach them. What are your goals now?
Oh, wow. Very good question. And I think back to an interesting conversation me and John had about when I turned professional. Because when I was younger and still a young amateur, I had set goals each season for particular tournaments that I wanted to play in and perhaps play well. I wanted to gear my game towards these tournaments or these weeks. And I didn't so much have that when I turned professional. It was just, well, let's go play as good as I can. And maybe that was detrimental to my performance. And I'll bring that to nowadays. And I need to get back to more goal orientation. Look at some tournaments that I want to play in, see what times of year they may or may not be in, and try to peak during those weeks. Not necessarily try to play week in and week out, because that's just, really not possible to do.
Right.
So spread them out. Practice your game and try to be in really good shape that 1 week this month. Or, okay, in 6 weeks I've got something coming up. What do I need to work on? Let's start working on things to get ready for something 6 weeks from now. So goal orientation is important for me instead of just going out and playing. I need to have some sort of a structure, really. Have something to play for is what I need.
Right.
Right.
That's
John, something we're discussing right now. We're actually in the midst of discussing that right now for 2020. Jason hasn't necessarily put a target in place for any particular tournaments. He's trying to figure out family plans, work plans. Where he's a member, the club where he's a member has a tremendous population of fantastic amateurs, and that's always something that's on his calendar, is to win his club championship, because a lot of his club champions go on to play some really good events and do really well in, if not win them, within the amateur tournaments in the Carolinas area. So that's actually something we're working on now. Jason's just trying to figure out his time so he can be goal-oriented, but to his point, that was something that with the first call this year, he literally had done that research, he had done that work, and he pinpointed 3 particular weeks that he really wanted to peak. And we structure our time together, we structure the phone calls together so that could be in place. And I would say for the most part, he accomplished his goal of peaking at the right time. What we learned from it is being able to set the goals properly so the peak can take another level next year. And with that, I'm hoping he's shooting for, and we've discussed shooting for, maybe a little bit bigger tournament to play well in, and still remain in the 2 or 3 that he was in this year that he did well in, and that would be the foundational basis to play well in the others.
What else, John, does Jason, are you going to work with him on? He touched on a little bit about, keeping in the right physical shape. Obviously, you're going to work on the course with his golf game, but is that something else too that, obviously you're not going to necessarily, be right there and working out with him, but is that something that you want to keep him focused on as well, as keeping himself in good shape and obviously nutritionally as well, and encourage him to because that's going to affect, obviously, how he plays and how he performs.
He already does a great job of that. He doesn't. Is he doing it at world-class status? No, but I would say he's doing it better than 95% of the population, which allows him to do what he does. I think the real keys now, considering we're almost in November, it's off season for him in theory, is providing him enough goal orientation through the off season to say, look, come March 1st or April 1st, whatever date we decide, here are some things that I need to have happening from a skill development standpoint of view, from a skill maintenance standpoint of view, from a competitive standpoint of view. It's harder to compete in the colder weather that he experiences where he lives, but it won't necessarily negate the ability for him to make what I would call a mini goal. His club comes up with some crazy winter competition. Why not try to gear up? Why not try to sprint within that gear up to really play well in this and to look at the variables that are going to make him that much better for that particular tournament? What people fail to understand is each tournament you play builds for the next one. And I would say his lack of recent experience in competition is probably the thing he and I speak the most about, because from a physical standpoint of view, from a skill development and maintenance standpoint of view, he puts the work in. He's a student of the game. So as we talk about those things and talk about what his ball flight's doing, he's right on page with me. Like he said, he may need another set of eyes or another opinion, another way to attack the issue that he's trying to solve. But from a competitive standpoint of view, it's really trying to peak at a certain time, give him that detox time, give him that time, week, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it is, just totally detox, absorb what he did, not only absorb it, regurgitate it in a, hey, here's what we do next kind of thing. And he's really, really good at it. He's always been good at it. Most people are not. Most people are so caught up in the moment that they forget about they need that 24 hours minimal detox. The world's best players do that. They rarely play on a Monday other than a social round in a pro-am, unless it's a major. If it's a major, they're there on site. So going forward, it's literally just, hey, what are these tournaments we're focusing on? When will he be in Florida, or when will I be in North Carolina to help him with that? And how do we plan out the year so he is peaking going into these targeted tournaments?
Well said. What a great way to wrap up the session. Guys, I want to thank both of you for coming on tonight. And Jason, I want to wish you much continued success on your journey. And it sounds like you're in good, capable hands with John. And John, as always, I want to thank you for giving some great information to our listeners out there, and for introducing me to Jason here. And Jason, I hope you'll come back on again with John, and we'll look at some of the progress that you've made for 2020.
Thank you, Ted. I appreciate you allowing me on this evening. I've had a great time. And John, thank you for asking me. It's been very enjoyable.
Well, we appreciate it. And John, any final thoughts or closing comments? And then also I want you to let the folks know if they want to reach out, best way to contact you.
Sure. Jason, I've got to thank you for 20-year friendship. And if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for you and a handful of others, I wouldn't be where I am. And I appreciate it. And Ted, I think we ought to look at this as a yearly thing, maybe, to see how that progresses and how evolution goes. And the final comment I'd make is, if someone's listening to this podcast, I think the real bottom line is to understand that coach-pupil relationship, and to understand what the responsibilities are on both sides. It's a give-take kind of thing. It's not always a one-way street from either direction. And it can progress, it can withstand, it can evolve, and it can certainly be healthy for both sides, which it has. And I wish that for all golfers and their coaches. Again, thanks, Ted. Always a pleasure. Look forward to being on Coach's Corner sometime in the middle of November. In the meantime, if people are looking to find me, it's super, super easy. Everything I've got says John Hughes Golf, whether it's my website.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any social media. I'm always available. As Jason knows, you contact me by 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. You guaranteed a result the same day. And I'm working on some things where I'm loading a lot more video here recently. Ted, you and I had a conversation about that, and I'm looking forward to launching something January 1 that I think a lot of people around the world can take advantage of and have a lot of fun with.
Well, I appreciate it, John. As always, it's a pleasure having you on the show. And, again, I look forward to you coming back on Coach's Corner. And, Jason, the invitation's out there for you and John to come back and give us a progress report in 2020. Let us know how things are going and how things are progressing. And we'll talk a little bit about more about you reaching some of your new goals as you journey on from this point on. And keep up the great work, and congratulations on all of your success thus far. And I know there's some more great things happening in your future as well, and I appreciate it very much giving time tonight for my audience. And thank you, as always, John.
Thank you, Ted. Enjoy your evening.
Yes,
all right.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Ted.
guys. You're welcome.
Good night.
All right, that was John Hughes, PGA Master Professional, and one of his students, amateur golfer Jason Gabriel. Just talking a little bit about the coach-player relationship and a little bit about Jason's journey from amateur status to professional and now back to full circle to amateur status again. Obviously, his goals and his, point moving forward has changed a little bit from what it was 20 years ago, but still has some competitive juices and wants to get out there. So hopefully you took away some valuable information here and really from a player's perspective a little bit about some of the things that he's thinking about and what he's thought about and some of his priorities in life now. But either way, I think it's always good to get a perspective from somebody that's played at some of the highest levels out there, and gives the rest of us sort of an opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I want to do something like that too. I appreciate everybody joining in tonight. And again, a little bit shorter program. I want to thank both John Hughes and Jason Gabriel for being my special guest today. As I mentioned earlier, I won't be back next week, October 31st, which is Halloween. I'll be out of the area and not going to be doing a show, but I will be back on November 7th with, of course, another great round of Coach's Corner, and also a very interesting guest to share some thoughts and views on the game as well. One last thing I just want to mention before we close out the program. I'm going to play a short clip here from golfswing.com and give you a reminder on how you can get in touch with their online video program, and then we'll close out the program.
Are you finally ready to improve your golf game? Golfswing.com is changing the way golfers learn online. With the largest collection of golf training programs and drills on the planet, Golfswing.com can help you improve every part of your game. Whether you want to gain more distance, hit it closer, or just sink more putts, Golfswing.com's staff of world-class coaches can help you gain the results you need. Watch unlimited videos on any device from anywhere in the world and start playing better, scoring lower, having more fun, and saving money. Get your fix on demand at Golfswing.com.
All right, and remember to visit golfswing.com and enter the promo code Golf Talk Live at checkout to receive 50% off the subscription price. Again, it's a great online video training platform with some great instructors and lots of videos. So check them out. Go to golfswing.com. Join their website, their subscription website. It's 50% off if you enter the promo code Golf Talk Live. Thank you, everybody, for joining me this evening. I hope you enjoyed the program. Again, there won't be a show next week, and I will be back on November 7th. Have a great Halloween, everybody. Be careful out there for you kids. You never know what's lurking under the bushes. Anyways, have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll see you next time right here on Golf Talk Live. Thanks for listening to this evening's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. Remember to tune in each week at blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live. If you can't join us live, check out the on-demand section for previously aired broadcasts, or listen on any of the following social media platforms: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, CastBox, TalkStream Live, and of course, Spotify. To get updates on future shows and upcoming guests, be sure to visit the show's Facebook page, Golf Talk Live Blog. You can also follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Remember to join me live each week for another great broadcast of Golf Talk Live. See you next time. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.